Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Heartbeat, your daily Inter Miami podcast. And today we are talking about the 5 things we learned in last night's 2-1 loss to Tigres. It was a very frustrating end. I think there was a lot of positives, a lot of negatives. There was so much to break down for this game, and I'm only going to talk about 5 things in this one because these are the 5 most important. But ultimately, this Inter Miami team learned a lot last night. I think as fans, we should know that there was a lot to take away. Where this team stacks up against the best teams in the continent, right? These are the teams we're going to have to play and beat over the next couple of games if we want to repeat as Leagues Cup champions. These are the type of teams we're going to have to beat next year in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. So this was an incredible test to see where Inter Miami was. And I thought we did much better than when we played Monterrey a couple months ago. And I think we're in a much better spot. And I want to talk about a few of the reasons why today. But let's start with some of the negatives, because not only did this show us that we are capable, but it also showed us that we have certain parts of the field, certain players that can stand up to the average, to even above average MLS competition that we face on a regular basis. But that when you take these players or this system or this group of players to the top level of where Inter Miami wants to compete, there's a stark drop-off in quality, and we saw that last night. This is the best team we've played in months, and obviously the best, most complete, well-rounded team we've played since probably the Columbus Crew, maybe FC Cincinnati, but certainly since Monterrey. And I don't think Chelo Weigandt stood up to the pressure. This is number one. Ian Frey must start over Chelo Weigandt, and we saw last night exactly why. I like Chelo. He has been an improvement on DeAndre Yedlin. He's not as explosive, but I think he's more fundamentally sound, well-rounded compared to what Inter Miami's had over the last couple of years at right back. And you can see why Tata Martino felt that Chelo Weigandt was an improvement over DeAndre Yedlin or Harvey Neville or some of the other guys we've run out there at right back over the last couple of years. But this was a problem. Listen, every time Ian Frey plays, he's outstanding. But more importantly, Chelo doesn't have the ability to take advantage of the space that he's given purposely by the opposition team, by the opposition defense. We saw in last night's game that right channel for the right back to run through and run into was wide open so many times, and that was completely intentional from Tigres. They were daring Chelo Weigandt to drive the ball up the field to catch him out of position so that he was high up the pitch, but also because they know that he wasn't going to be a danger to them. They knew that if they could get him into the final third, they could create turnovers, win the ball back, and he wouldn't be as dangerous as many of the other players on our roster. That right flank was wide open for much of the game for that exact reason. And listen, that's going to continue to be the case moving forward as long as Inter Miami doesn't prove they can take advantage of that. And even more so once Lionel Messi returns to that right wing, because we know he loves to play centrally. That right flank for Inter Miami is always wide open. And we need a player that can take advantage of that. That's what Ian Frey is. He's so much better going forward. He is dangerous. He is ball secure. He can create. He can take guys on one-on-one. He can whip in better crosses, and then he can be his goal-scoring threat. He's not afraid to underlap or overlap. He's not afraid to take the ball into the box. He's not afraid to take the ball into the box and shoot or pass. He's an unpredictable X-factor type player. And so considering we've seen him be sound defensively, considering his background is as a center back, there's no reason that Chelo Weigandt should be starting over Ian Frey in must-win games. Clearly, Tata Martino has seen or has come to the decision that Chelo Weigandt is ahead of Ian Frey on the depth chart, but he's going to have to change that very soon, because Chelo Weigandt in games like this, where the margins are going to be very fine, it's going to be very difficult to create using your normal methods of offense. You need weapons across the field, and Chelo just wasn't that. He had 16 turnovers last night, led the team in turnovers, and for a right back that's supposed to be sound, that's supposed to not cause problems, that's supposed to just be doing the right thing at all times, that's not what Chelo did last night. And again, this is what you're going to expect to see against the best teams, right? We have a really good chance to face Pachuca on Thursday night. Pachuca is going to be the same thing and probably even better. Their coach is going to be more well-informed. He's going to watch this game and see that weakness. If Chelo starts on Thursday, it's going to be a bad omen for Inter Miami, who can still win, and we'll talk about that. But if you want to maximize what this team can do, it has to be with Ian Frey at right back. And the injury concerns are valid, but for Ian Frey, if he's available and healthy, he should be the starting right back. I know he's a natural center back. I know he can play in the midfield, but right now with this team, with the talent that's on this roster, there's a glaring spot for Ian Frey to step in at right back and be an improvement, especially going forward, but just in a way that will unlock so much space. We've talked a lot this season about creating width from the rest of your team because you want to unclog the central part of the pitch for Messi and Suarez. I know neither of them played last night, but when those two are on the field, there's going to be a natural attention drawn to the central part of the pitch. And that's why you need someone on the right wing that can actually take advantage of that. That's Ian Frey. It's not Chelo Weigandt. Weigandt is a great servant. He's a great player to have when you need to rotate. He's a great player to have when you're up against regular MLS competition. But in the most important games, which we're about to go into until this tournament's over, and then later on in the season when you get to the MLS Cup playoffs, you need Ian Frey to be the starter if you want to maximize what your team is capable of. Number 2, there is a stark difference between good center back play and average center back play on this team. I do not want to be too critical of Toto Aviles. I don't want to be too critical of Sergei Kristoff, but they are the couple or the pairing that have started the most games this season for Inter Miami. Toto Aviles, we saw for a long period of time in that first half, first 25 to 35 minutes, he was really struggling to play out of the back. He grew into the game a little bit, and defensively he's sound, but when you are a liability in terms of trying to keep possession, when you're a liability in terms of being an outlet for everyone else around you to get out of trouble, if you are going to turn the ball over in bad positions, it's going to be a problem. And we've seen Sergio Busquets play in the back line so much lately that perhaps we got a little accustomed to having that excellent out-of-the-back play. But with Aviles, it's just not there. And it did hurt us in last night's game. And then similarly, on the other side, David Martinez was excellent for 80 minutes. And I didn't reserve a point for him, so I'll just say it now. He was really, really good. He answered a lot of the questions that we had after that first game against Puebla. He was excellent in distribution. He was excellent in possession and maintaining the ball. He had a few opportunities defensively in one-on-one situations that he did what he had to do. But this game, he was put under a lot more pressure defensively. He was good in the air, good in the box, good being in the right position. The tactical setup for him was solid, and then he was still good and comfortable on the ball in possession. And then he got taken out after 80 minutes, and the drop-off to Sergei Kristoff, who, again, is a solid player. I'm not here to hate on Kristoff, but the drop-off is immense. Kristoff is not a bad MLS center back, but compared to David Martinez and compared to what we've seen from Sergio Busquets back there, the drop-off was significant, and we saw it play out right away. Kristoff, ultimately, he fails to clear the ball, which is what leads to the second goal for Tigres, which cost us the game. I honestly put that one a little bit more on Tata Martino than Kristoff because bringing in a center back who's completely cold, who's missed the last couple of games in the 80th minute and telling him to just find the rhythm of the game and to just come in mid-game and make an impact, that is very tough as a center back. And he made a mistake right away. That, to me, is putting a player in a bad position putting him in a position to fail. I don't really know why that substitution was made. Fortunately, this wasn't a knockout game. Fortunately, he didn't cost us the tournament, but it did significantly impact this game, and it did make it harder for us moving forward because we're going to be in a more difficult part of the bracket. That said, David Martinez was exceptional, and I think Inter Miami is going to add another center back over the next couple of days. That player won't be available for the Leagues Cup because he wasn't registered in time, but we have a little bit of a problem in our center back spot. Nico Frede wasn't a huge upgrade, even though I think he was better than Kristoff. But certainly Kristoff and Aviles are not that elite level center back, not even at this level, in terms of feeling comfortable and confident. Can you win with them? Sure. But will you feel great about them anytime they're on the pitch? Not so much. And I think upgrading on both Christoph and Aviles over the next couple of days in order to have the most secure team possible for the biggest games of the season in the MLS Cup playoffs is important. I think Inter Miami is going to do that. They acquired an international roster slot on Friday, and I think that is reserved for a right-sided center back who is going to come in and partner with David Martinez and help make this Inter Miami team more complete. And if that player is of the quality of David Martinez, this is going to be an incredible team. Number 3, we saw to start the game a little bit of a tactical switch up from Tata Martino. I thought this game was a chance to either go all out and prove you can beat one of the best teams in the continent, or it was an opportunity to test a few things out. We saw him rest Sergio Busquets, rest Luis Suarez. So it wasn't going to be an all-out, go for the win, go for the pride, go for the statement game. And so instead it was, let's figure some things out. We saw if David Martinez and Toto Aviles could partner with each other, it was okay. The ability to play out of the back was questionable. But the real difference we saw was Matías Rojas coming out of the midfield and going to that right wing spot, and Julian Gressel coming from the right wing spot back into the midfield. And the takeaway here is that Rojas is a winger and Julian Gressel is not a midfielder for this Inter Miami team. That feels very harsh to say, but it does feel appropriate. I know Taylor Twellman was giving some flack to Matías Rojas as a winger late in that second half, but I couldn't have disagreed with him more. He was getting on the ball, taking guys on one-on-one. He was creating in a way that not many of our guys were able to last night against really good, a good defense in Tigres. He was more involved as a winger high up the pitch. He was more goal dangerous. He had a bigger ability to impact the game in a positive way from that right wing spot than he has in recent games from the midfield, where he tends to disappear for long stretches. When he's at the right wing spot, he feels the need and the capacity to just find the ball, to get on the ball consistently and try and make things happen, to be much more aggressive going forward. He doesn't do any of that when he's in the midfield. He can, as a midfielder, make late runs and get into good positions and can finish off a few opportunities, which we've seen in the last couple of games. But as far as being a true midfielder, Matías Rojas is not. He can do a job there, but as a right winger, and I think a little bit as a left winger, he's in his more natural environment, his more natural position. And you see the silkiness comes out. You see the confidence comes out. You see him finding better positions. You see him with the confidence to take guys on one-on-one and create. He had a few opportunities. None of them resulted in goals, but you could see how if you do that type of thing enough times, you're going to create offense. This is the player that we brought in to be Messi's replacement when Messi went to the Copa America. Ultimately, that's not how things played out, mostly because Rojas went to the Copa America, but also because Gressel was great on the right wing. But still, you can see why Inter Miami really liked this player from Corinthians, because he has that dynamic winger ability that not many on this team have. Obviously, Robert Taylor and Leo Messi do, but it's not something we've seen a ton of late. But on the flip side, Julian Gressel went back into the midfield, and we've seen this experiment so many times this season, but it's been a while because he's been locked in at that right wing spot since Copa America began, and he's been great there. The confidence is much higher. The ability to create and impact games is much higher. He had a long stretch of goal contribution. I think it was like 8 games or 7 and 8 games, something like that. And so the confidence was there. This was Tata Martino's opportunity to put Gressel back in the midfield and see how it looked. And it didn't look great. Even with Yannick Bright in the midfield, it was tough for him to keep ground. It was really tough for Inter Miami to win the midfield. I didn't think Redondo had a particularly good game either, but our midfield really struggled, and that was in spite of a really good performance from Yannick Bright. And partially, I think a lot of that is Julian Gressel not being a physical monster in the midfield, which is what you need at this level. And Gressel just isn't that. He isn't able to create as effectively because he's not finding as good of positions. He has more defensive responsibility, which takes away from his ability to find the game going forward. I just don't like Julian Gressel as a midfielder. I think putting Rojas back in the midfield and Gressel at the right wing is probably the better formula for Inter Miami. I know I just complimented Rojas as a winger, but going into Thursday, I think Julian Gressel has to play in that right wing, assuming Leo Messi isn't coming back anytime soon. And Rojas back in the middle, or potentially Rojas at left wing, potentially Diego Gomez into the midfield, and Kramaski and Gomez will be back. So we'll see what the midfield looks like. But for Tata Martino, yes, Rojas can play as a winger. No, Gressel shouldn't be playing as a midfielder. Number 4, and let's get into some more of the positives. The pressure is off for Leo Campana. In the 74th minute, he earned and converted a penalty that equalized the game for Inter Miami. And you could tell from the second that goal went in, he was a new player, taking guys on. Fancy footwork was coming off for him, connecting, playing 1-2 passes. He has had this, I believe, record hanging over his shoulders, this weight on his chest. Over the last month, he's been 1 goal away from equalizing Gonzalo Higuain's all-time Inter Miami record. I think that's been playing on him. It has gotten worse and worse as the games have gone on without him scoring that goal. And ultimately, when he converted that penalty, the pressure was off and he was a new player after that. He looked phenomenal, especially in those last 25 minutes. I thought he was a new player. And I think some of the criticism has been a little unfair for him over the last few games. But man, it was really good to see him score a goal and then to come to life after that. It felt like if we hadn't made those substitutions in the Christoph and David Martinez substitution in the 80th minute, Campana was going to be the guy to take this game and win it for us. And that's not what happened, but for his confidence moving forward, I think this was an incredible moment, and congratulations to him for getting the goal that equalizes the record. And congratulations to him for finishing the job that he's been set out to do for the last couple months. And ultimately, a great penalty as well. And I think for his confidence, it's going to be huge. And hopefully now he can cut off the blonde hair and go back to the more natural look for him, because I think that will help as well. Number 5, this team can compete with anyone. Listen, last night we went toe-to-toe with Tigres, who is one of the best teams in Liga MX. They're a team that can win this tournament, especially now that they have a little bit of a home field advantage. We'll see how long that lasts. But ultimately, this Tigres team can beat anyone in this tournament. They can beat any Liga MX club. They can beat any MLS club. And we went toe-to-toe with them without Lionel Messi, without Diego Gomez, without Luis Suarez, without Benjamin Kramaski. This is a team that is without their best players, and we still went toe-to-toe with Tigres. Ultimately, I know there was a stretch where Tigres looked like a much better team, minute 15 to minute 35. But for much of the rest of the game, Inter Miami was the better team, created more half chances, weren't able to convert as much. But ultimately, the way they lost to this Tigres team was 2 bad clearances from our center backs that led to 1 incredible goal from Tigres, and hats off to Brunetta for that first goal, because that was a doozy. And then the second goal where, listen, we just had a terrible clearance and we gave them an easy opportunity. If you clean that up, you can win this game 1-0. If you have more talent, more ability to create opportunities down that right flank, especially from that right back, someone like Ian Frey starting instead of Chelo Weigandt, you're going to create more opportunities. You can win that game. If you have more from that right wing spot, because as good as Matías Rojas was, as solid as Julian Gressel's been, is not Lionel Messi. And you put Messi back in there, right? I just complimented Leo Campana, but if you put Luis Suarez back in there, if you add Diego Gomez to this midfield instead of Julian Gressel, you can see how, and if you potentially add a new right center back to partner with David Martinez, or you put Sergio Busquets back there in order to have an incredible playing out of the back ability, incredible on the ball to break down this Tigres press with ease, you can create so many opportunities. This team had it right there for them in last night's game, and yet there's so much potential for them to improve over the next couple of weeks. Even going into Thursday night's game, potentially against Pachuca, you're going to have Luis Suarez, you're going to have Diego Gomez, you're going to have Benjamin Kramaski. This will be a better team on Thursday night. than it was last night. If Inter Miami plays to their potential, they can beat anyone. And I didn't really mention in this episode, but Tota Aviles, Jordi Alba, Federico Redondo, Julian Gressel, Robert Taylor, Sergei Kristov, and then, of course, Marcelo Weigandt. These were underwhelming performances by their standards. Certainly, Chelo has been better. Certainly, Jordi Alba has been better. Federico Redondo's had some really nice games. All of these guys played down a little bit. And yes, you can say that was because of Tigres, but I think a lot of them were capable of doing much more. And still, despite a handful of poor performances, we were still right there and able to beat this Tigres team. Give us Diego Gomez, give us Luis Suarez, put Ian Frey at right back, and this team will work wonders. They have it in them. So I guess the takeaway from this last point is that we have the talent. We just have to get the personnel right. We have to have our personnel available, and we can beat anyone. Guys, I will be back on the Dry Pink Dialogue to break down this game in depth later tonight. I encourage you to check it out. But for now, those are 5 things we learned. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And as always, I will see you tomorrow.